They're going to get that extra information, have that first choice, go for potentially the easier matchup, or at least the easier matchup for them, and try and secure their survival. Because on their performance recently, they might be able to battle with these top OPL teams if they're given another 14-game season. It's just, understandably, the new orcs, they take time to get going.
Yeah, but they've looked so good towards the end here, and so we'll see how they end their seasons. Actually, the last game for both these teams, if I'm correct there. So Sudden Fear and Chiefs will go to battle one last time here for this split. Maokai and Sion, the 3 bans there for Sudden Fear, and Ezreal, Nidalee, Lee Sin, the 3 for Chiefs.
3 champions that really come around the double AD strategy. Nidalee wasn't in performance the last game, but it's actually a ban towards Christmas trees, I've been told. I wondered who the Sudden Fear Nidalee player was, because they haven't played Nidalee, but they've had so many bans targeted towards him. And it's that top Nidalee, the tanky Nidalee, popularized by Stanley many a year ago, that's actually been banned away from Christmas trees.
And I think that's actually my favorite story about Sudden Fear, because we were kind of like, hey...
Must be the mid, right?
What happened? Why do you ban it? And they're just like, we don't know. It's just really good. We don't want to play against it. So apparently it's so good they don't want to find out. But we have gotten into the draft. Now Rek'Sai is the first pick for Sudden Fear. And Swiper is doing something that he might even do. He's hovering that Tryndamere.
He's hovering that Tryndamere. We already said Chiefs are locked in at first. I don't know how they're approaching this game. That's the big question. They could go for some of these picks. But again, just given their penchant for winning, given the fact that they're so close to the 14-0, now no longer possible. 13-1, it's not a substitute, but it's at least coming towards the greatness they were aspiring to.
Yeah, and they do take things quite seriously with their first 2 picks at least. Sejuani, a very big 5.5 jungler, and Kalista, one of Radiant's most played AD carries.
And Swiper, he was hovering the Tryndamere. He probably has one of those contractual obligations that gives him 1 Tryndamere game a split. Theoretically, this would be the game to play
it. Would have to be this one.
Unless they have a very practiced Tryndamere comp they want to run at the highest level. They're still leaving themselves the options, but Kalista for Radia and Sejuani. Spooks is on the hype train with this 5.5 Sejuani.
Yeah, and this is Spooks' first game on the champion as well, assuming it's him playing it, which you have to think is the case here, given Sejuani doesn't really fit anywhere else, but we'll have to see. Sudden Fear have been mixing things up a bit. They might even go back to last game's support choice.
Yeah, I mean, it most likely will be support. When you have Rek'Sai and Nautilus hovered, you have to think that's support in jungle. Some teams like OMG like to do crazy things and throw Rek'Sai into the top lane, but we'll just say probably not.
Yeah, probably not. There is Nautilus, Lissandra, the 2 picks there. No Riven, I assume that's an APAPS champion. He hovered it last game as well, but going to take, again, a very strong champion for him. Has a bit of flexibility, can go to the top lane, but APAPS has been the Lissandra player for his team.
But remember, LeBlanc was available, and Swiffer can potentially pick it up. It's not necessarily an ideal matchup for the LeBlanc, particularly as Lissandra. You can catch her with the Frozen Tomb if she tries to overextend for damage, specifically with the Mimic Distortion. But for LeBlanc to be available and not locked in by Paps, maybe he's actually just a bit nervous about taking it against one of the masters of LeBlanc and Chief Swiffer.
Maybe, but the nice thing here is if they do want to move Lissandra to the top lane and Swiffer doesn't take LeBlanc, then suddenly they get both.
Yeah, that's true. And I believe they have played both top and mid lane. They basically treated Lissandra as that flex, but played it in both lanes. You actually gave a very interesting statistic to me before the broadcast. The Chiefs, they play those flexible champions, but it's only in one role. They have never actually had a Lissandra, for example, in top and mid. They have one person on the team playing each of these champions.
Yeah, even as another example, we've got Morgana Aurelia there locked in for Chiefs. Swiper actually going to go back to a big, more carry-style champion for him, but that Morgana should be for Rosie in the bottom lane. No one else has ever played it in another role, despite it seeing lots of play in quite a few different places.
And that's the big thing in 2015. It's been flex picks across the board. All sorts of crazy champions have come up as flex picks. The likes of Castellan, of course, have really been there noted. Even the Rek'Sai is developing into a flex pick. Nautilus as well has to be in the discussion. But that's just not been the Chiefs' game. So for them to play predictably, you'd have to say, maybe unpredictably predictable, has actually not been something that's been used against them. As I mentioned, plenty of victories and only the 1 loss on the season.
Yeah, it's funny that we even see Lissandra there for Sudden Fear, because another fun fact, Lissandra has been banned twice against the Chiefs and they have never played it.
Don't know what to say about that. I believe maybe back in the day we saw some Lissandra coming through from them, but not in the OPL, that's for sure.
No, and Lissandra's dropped off a little bit, but is going to be picked up here, of course, by Sudden Fear, but it might be a mid lane here up against the potential LeBlanc. They're actually leaving Swiffer with the counter pick, but Lucian Nah, Sudden Fear's last 2 picks, and this has got comfort written all over it for Christmas Trees and M for Moon.
Very strong frontline team, but Lucian's going to have to basically act on his own. Supportless is useful for disengage, though. But you look at it, Rek'Sai, Lissandra, Nah, all going to want to be into the back line. And it's only really the Lucian as a Sudden Fear backline. He has a lot of mobility, can even pick up the CDR boots to have that relentless pursuit on a shorter cooldown. But this is a dive comp coming through from Sudden Fear.
And I wonder, can Swiffer resist the LeBlanc? It's open here. They've got it available. Sitting currently atop of the MVP standings, but might want one more big game to close it out. Rosie going to hover one of his favorite champions while they consider their last pick. But you have to think if the Chiefs are going to go out for their last game, they just give Swiffer one of his best champions.
Not an ideal matchup. That's the issue. We already mentioned that LeBlanc can be locked down by the Lissandra. They're thinking about a Zyra pick. It's probably not going to be that. And now they're moving towards something that's just come into the meta. This is interesting. Swiffer, I know, personally, has picked up this champion recently, and he's going to break it out in competitive.
Yeah, it's going to be his first play on it in the mid lane here. Diana is the last pick there for Chiefs, so not the Zyra that I'm sure Rosie wanted to play. He'll take Morgana once again for a very standard Chiefs Kalista Morgana lane, but the Chiefs, you know, they've maybe been a bit slow to adapt. We talk about their lack of flex plays here. That's maybe just something where they're playing their style and comfortable with it, but not necessarily transitioning with the meta. This has 5.5 written all over it.
Absolutely. Sejuani and Diana have really been popularized, as you say. On the Sudden Fear side, there's a support Nautilus, so they're doing their bit as well. Very interesting matchup coming through in the mid lane, Diana versus Lissandra. Lissandra has had those targeted nerfs towards her Q, so she has less wave clear and thus less poke. Diana, she's a really interesting champion. We see it a lot on China especially. She can get so tanky building AP that if she can navigate the laning phase, she could go massive this game.
Yeah, and again, some great picks by both sides, but we really want to know who you guys at home think are going to take the game here. So get on Twitter and use the hashtag CHF win for the Chiefs or SF win for Sudden Fear.
And Sudden Fear, with their performances against Avant and Legacy, they have to start coming into the consideration. Chiefs, they've been knocked off the pedestal of 100% win rate. And Sudden Fear, they're coming up right at the end of the season.
No, but the Chiefs, not happy to be knocked off any sort of pedestal.
True.
They're a team that loves winning and really just hates losing. It's what's made them such a competitive team throughout the ages. It's their last game for both teams. They both would love to win here. The Chiefs, maybe for pride more than anything else, but Sudden Fear playing here, even if they do lose and have a good showing, that has to at least maybe intimidate the teams that they're going to be facing in relegation.
And that's why when I was watching specifically the Chiefs consider some of those more interesting champions, the personal picks like the Tryndamere, for example, I wondered if they would go for maybe that comfort game, high strategies for finals. Finals are just around the corner. But no, they're going to go towards the meta because the Chiefs, they always play well when they're on that win streak, when they're in that comfort zone. That's why I wondered how would they come back after that last loss to Fornot. They were able to take down Avant. In their history, we go back to 2014 circuit even. You know, they had that excellent start to the year. They won Autumn. They were looking strong in Winter, got to the final. But that was the end of their win streaks. Legacy and Bannington's taking them down in consecutive events. I'm happy to see them take this game seriously, try and keep developing their strategies because finals are coming up and they need to be clutch and win this one out to justify what has been a very impressive season from them.
Yeah, they just don't have time to muck around. That's the thing here. Chiefs, a big game for them coming up at least, maybe if this one at the end of the season isn't that big. And Sudden Fear have just impressed everyone. I mean, certainly in relegation, teams will be thinking, man, both these teams look really good. Which one do we pick? And that's exactly what Sudden Fear want.
Absolutely. Sudden Fear, they're going to be the ones making the decision. But at this point, I mean, which one do you choose if you're even the OCS teams, even if the shoe's on the other foot? It's looking complicated. On the OCS, you know, just watching the games yesterday, plenty of strong teams coming through as well. So, I mean, there's interest at the top and the bottom of the table, and that's the sign of a good league when there's action at both sides.
Yeah, and back to maybe some of the notable picks here as well while we wait to get into the game. We're going to have the Nautilus into Callisto again. I believe this was blind pick Nautilus for the AD carry matchup, but Radius kind of picked himself into a big CC train.
Look, I'll give Sudden Fear credit and call it a flex pick Nautilus. It, of course, was a blind pick. It's been answered by Morgana, though. That's the big consideration. You look down, they have only a single AP champion. It's just the Lissandra to potentially blow up the Black Shield. So the consideration there is against double AP, Black Shield, it might drop off. They're just in the incidental AoE magic damage. Not that much AoE magic damage. Lissandra best at locking down a single person. Of course, has some AoE CC, but it's best at locking down a single person. Navigate away from that Lissandra. The depth charge, not going to do much against the Morgana Black Shield if it's up.
Yeah, kind of moving into that mid lane, actually. What do you think of that matchup? Because we noted that LeBlanc, probably not something he wants to take because of the blocker Lissandra pick here, but Diana, it was Swiffer's counter pick. It is a new champion sort of coming up in the meta. How do you think about this particular matchup?
It's very tough to categorize this particular matchup. I mean, Diana matchups, just historically, she's always been strong against control mages, the likes of Orianna. Lissandra, not really a control mage. She's also strong against assassins like Zed and Fizz. Lissandra, not really either of those. She's a bit in the middle. And in terms of like simple strategy, she has a ranged auto attack. She has good poke and wave clear. In the early levels, Diana's wave clear isn't there. She has to get auto attacks in, proc that Moon Silver Blade passive, get the shield refresh to push the lane. So it's definitely going to be run by the Lissandra in early levels. Post 6, Diana, with the Lunar Rush resets, if you hit those Crescent Strikes, you can do so much work. There's always kill pressure, even against a Lissandra who does have the option of stasis. So I think the junglers will be a big factor, specifically when Sejuani comes through. There is the burst damage from Diana to kill her during the Glacial Prison.
Yeah, and I guess moving into our last matchup now as well, we actually saw a lot of Gnar from Christmas Tree specifically. It's his most played and most successful champion, but Gnar in general sort of dropped off around the 5.4, 5.5 era. Did get a couple small nerfs here and there, but still a perfectly serviceable champion. Aurelia was one of the cleanest, not counter picks, but just safe picks into Gnar. Against a quality of player like Swiper, who's exceptional at a champion like Aurelia, do you think Christmas Tree is maybe going to be just a little scared?
So the Gnar nerfs came through. They didn't really change a lot about his laning. His laning's always been pretty powerful. You have a no-resource champion who does have a long-range harass tool, is equally good in a 1v2 and a 2v2. The big thing about Gnar to consider in this particular matchup is the fact that because those nerfs have come through, because his laning phase against Aurelia is not that strong in general, it's just average, it feels like Aurelia will get stronger than him earlier than level 9, level 7, level 6, and then Gnar might struggle. So, I mean, you have to say, when nerfs come to a champion, the champions that did well do better, so you have to take Aurelia in the matchup.
Well, a bit of an aggressive start actually there for Christmas Trees. Doran's Blade is his item choice, but we'll get to that in a second as Sudden Fear are going to take to the Rift for the second time this evening and their last time for this split of the OPL. They're going to have to fight for their spot back here, but they're going to get off to a great start against the Chiefs. And another big 5-man invade for Vision comes through. In fact, Spooks has been hooked up. Now Christmas Trees going to come in there for a little bit of extra damage, but Spooks doesn't force the flash, just forced out of his jungle.
I think he was definitely surprised to see the massive Nautilus dredge line come through and hook him, but there wasn't the level 1 damage to get the kill. They couldn't overextend for the damage. Spooks even sticks with his flash, doesn't even go for the reactive flash, holds onto that cooldown. They get the early vision they're looking for, specifically the lane ward, but that's all Sudden Fear get from their level 1.
Yeah, Rosie did a good job, though. Rotated into Sudden Fear's bottom side of the red jungle. And he put a couple wards down himself, but not the same deep vision that Sudden Fear are able to get. So an early vision advantage, and maybe again looking for a swap, but both teams going to move down towards the bottom, and you have to think another 2v2 matchup for the Nautilus into the Callisto.
Yeah, that will be the 2v2 matchup. We're interested to see how it goes again with the Morgana, who does have the tools to deal with the consistent CC coming out from Brawler. No crazy level 1s because we don't have a Scion. There's no potential for suicide into a camp. So definitely going to see more standard lanings, no extra experience, at least as far as we can tell.
Yeah, so both junglers going to start the same camps here. Krugs into red buff for both of them, but of course on opposite sides of the map. Swiper, a little bit of help there for Spooks, and the same for the bottom lane there for Sudden Fear. No Gromp, I believe, started there by the Chiefs, so no extra advantage, just a normal lane here. And like you mentioned at the start of the game, Christmas Trees, we've seen Longsword a lot as an aggressive start for Gnar, but Doran's Blade is maybe a step above.
And look, he's played this matchup a lot, even just in the OPL, but I imagine in solo queue and scrims as well. You don't have as much sustain, but Aurelia's not going to be looking for damage trades in the very early game. So, look, it makes you better against dives. You have that extra health. The on-hit sustain is fine. I think it's a decent item pickup. It just has more room for downside because you don't have 450 health worth of regeneration coming through from 3 pots.
Yep, so Christmas Trees will start his early lane. Does have a fast level 2 here, so has the early lead. But Swiper, a seasoned Aurelia player, and again, a very big solo queue star as well. So more than used to any matchup that's going to be thrown at him.
I mean, Aurelia's understand. In the early levels, they're going to eat harass. He's obviously going for the regen start with the Crystalline Fast 3 potions. He understands this matchup just as well as Christmas Tree. It's seasoned players on both their champions, so that's always exciting because you get to see kind of the subtleties of these matchups. We've already seen one, the Doran Blade over the Longsword.
Yeah, Pink Bomi now maybe going to win the first early bit of the jungle. Scuttle Crab, so important to take in the early stages, and the first one in the bottom side will go to Bomi's Rek'Sai.
And there's more considerations. If he'd actually gone up a little bit, would have found a very low health Spooks. That's the reason why you don't pop out and pick up any Rift Scuttler if you're Sejuani. You're realistically on your first clear going to be below 200 health.
And I think that's one of those things that we might see grow a little bit more as this meta develops with the 5.5. Tank junglers, great of course with the Barmy Cinder coming in. That Cinder Hawk enchant, fantastic for them. But your early clears can get pretty sketchy as far as health levels go.
And that's kind of the interesting factor is that now, if you get through your first clear, absolutely, you get to pick up an excellent item that synergizes, that scales into the late game. But you have to remember, you don't spawn with a Bami Cinder. You don't spawn with a Cinder Hulk. Your first clear is still very, very risky, and that's why the likes of the strong early pressure junglers, like, for example, Rek'Sai, for example, Lee Sin, are still relevant, because if people are predictably jungling in terms of path, you know, you get those early level 1 wards down, you can track where they are. If you're in the right spot, if you're a smart jungler, and we see plenty of good counter ganking coming out in the OPL, you can be at someone's wolves when they have 100 health, and then you pick up an early kill and double buffs.
Yeah, but Spooks, though, just does get his early Trailblazer. Same with Rek'Sai, actually. So both junglers off to fine starts, but no shenanigans early on as the Scuttle Crab will get felled on the top side there for Spooks, so he'll get the next early neutral. Swiffer looking to bully this Lissandra a bit. Have to be careful. Diana pretty fiercely melee, but Lissandra short-ranged herself.
Not going to be bullying anything as Diana at level 4. I mean, doesn't even have a Doran Ring to go for the extra AP and maybe a potential kill secure. Not even sure if the Lissandra's going to pick up any experience, though. We see a trade in bottom.
Yeah, onto Rosie. Actually, Raider even going to get poked down as well. Brawler took a little too much damage in that trade, but Emphamoon continuing to play aggressively on this Lucian.
I mean, it's a very interesting matchup. Nautilus, in the situation it was in, I thought was excellent. As a blind pick, Morgana, probably the best tool to deal with it. As we see the jungler hanging around mid, but Swiffer, no real incentive and no gap close even to get in there with Paps.
No, just going to wait for the creeps to come in and then clear them out. I mean, Spook probably wants his lanes to play fairly safely as well, though Swiffer will get aggressive once you use the passive there. As you can see him glowing with that charge, but perhaps good snare to move out of the way, and Diana will be held at arm's length for now.
It was interesting to see that Swiffer has put a point into his Moonfall in the early levels. A lot of Diana players don't actually pick that up till level 8 because they want the early extra points in the shield to deal with the auto-attack harass from most ranged mid laners, and just the trades coming through. Swiffer, it tells me that around level 6 we might see this Sejuani coming around the mid lane.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, Swiffer makes, I guess, the aggressive of the two choices here. Doesn't want any extra shield, doesn't need it. Just wants a bit of extra aggression once he does get the Lunar Rush online as Christmas trees. Farming up here in the top side, very even on CS, but no, not going to go for the first back. And in the bottom, Raider, who was down maybe 5-6 CS or so, keeping very even against the Lucian.
Just trying to see if there'll be any big advantage. We expect Lucian to win this matchup early. One of the best laning matchups for Lucian is against the Kalista because you're able to get those burst trades in before she picks up enough attack speed from Martial Poise to navigate away from those skill shots. So Lucian, he hasn't been able to pick up the CS advantage. Is that because he has the support Nautilus? We don't really know a lot about the strength of this champion. It's not necessarily weak, but it's not a thresh of the lane. Navigate tough situations. If you see two people, that both solo laners expecting to lose laning phase, that should empower you as a jungler. You're already winning the jungle matchup as well. You need to be the one to take advantage of what is a very defensive start from Chiefs.
Well, we'll pop into the game though. Things, again, still slowing down a little bit here in the early game, but Pink Bomi actually going to rotate in towards the top side. And that Christmas trees, they're going in, and Swiper knows what's up. Doesn't even need to know the jungler's there and immediately flashes away.
I mean, Swiper, he has that top lane sense that only few people do. He's good at expecting ganks in those sort of situations, and it gets him away from another one.
Yeah, Brawler in the bottom side, taking a bit of poke there as well. Supportless doing okay. Relic Shield keeping him reasonably well top, but all these Dark Bindings threatening well, and that Rend, a real little auto attack that lands from Kalista just hurts that little bit more.
It'll be interesting to see how Radier builds this Kalista. Will he just return to the Hurricane Skull Thought? Will we see the Berserker's Greaves do a Twitch impression and go for the Rend damage and just build a BF sword and build the Bloodthirster from there? Again, the current mindset is the Bloodthirster first, but every player, they have their own preference.
Yeah, as we do see, some early items have been picked up now as well. We mentioned the Trailblazers already for the junglers, but Christmas Tree's got his Cinder now as well, so going to start to build in what's a very popular 5.5 item. We're going to see plenty of this in the game, I'm sure. Morellonomicon on the way for Apex, and Swiffer actually going for the Abyssal Scepter early.
I mean, Abyssal Scepter on Diana is such a wonderful pickup, specifically because we've already mentioned, until she gets quite a few points in her Crescent Strike, struggles to clear waves, just reducing the magic resist of those lane minions allows her to push better. And again, the other point you always have to mention is with that Pale Cascade shield in particular, it scales off AP in terms of the amount of health it gives you, and double scales, of course, because it's a shield that refreshes. But then Magic Resist interacts with health, just as if you bought yourself a Negatron Cloak. So it's extra effective health, and then the bot doesn't engage.
Yeah, Brawler going in, Raider going to get ulted, but Rosie will zone them off. The ulti's already been popped as Soul Shackles will stun up Brawler. Rosie does get snared by Nautilus, but Raider could be in trouble. The heal comes through. Emphamoon wants to get aggressive, though. A great binding from Rosie will keep him safe, and Emphamoon has to run. Spooks is down, has the ulti ready, but Pink Bomi is in the area now as well. Spooks, though, doesn't pull the trigger. I think minions might have been in the way.
But excellent pathing from both junglers, particularly debone me because it looked really bad with Spooks coming in. Even had the Glacial Prison, didn't want to throw it because he didn't have a lot of mana. Might not have been able to use his gap close if he used the Glacial Prison. And Radiant, he was in no position to fight.
Yeah, not in fighting shape at all as Christmas Trees will fight Swiper, but this Phage here going to make Aurelia very sticky to even Mini Knight here. They'll trade blows back and forth, hyper helping in that situation, but Aurelia starting to really turn the lane around like she almost always does.
Yeah, Missy actually re-engaging in the top.
Could be trouble actually there. Rek'Sai coming in to potentially aid. Swiper knows he has to run away now. Meganar, a big threat. Rek'Sai actually went down to the bottom, so a nice little mind game, but Swiper, you do not need to give him much to convince him he's going to kill you in his lane.
Dissuades him from the dive. Swiper is maxing the Equilibrium Strike first. That's actually something that we won't see as much in 5.6, is that the ability numbers have been tuned down a little bit. Looking more for burst trades rather than the consistent trades, but can dive in with the backline with the Q, get the stun on, get a couple of autos, and then just back away with the Rage passive.
Yeah, Meganar now up as well, so Christmas Trees going to use that Nalbar, and Swiper probably going to wait that out before they go back in. The Chiefs posturing around the Dragon now, maybe thinking about even a gank as Rosie and Spooks run back and forth through the speed shrine, but Sudden Fear, plenty of good defenses down. Swiffer with his blue buff actually threatening Paps quite well, and it might just be enough here if Paps goes for his blue for Chiefs to take the first Dragon.
It's going to be risky. They need to get either Radia or Swiffer on top of that Dragon because both of them have good consistent damage. Sejuani doesn't have a lot of damage to that Dragon just early, and Morgana doesn't offer very much either. So at this point, with the lanes as they are, with Swiffer without an Abyssal Scepter, so isn't able Diana yet to push in the waves. They don't have the lane control to take the Dragon.
Yes, they're not going to do too much early on here. Swiffer now level 9 will max out his Q, you have to think, is the first major ability. Winning in CS actually by about 10, so Lysandra and her almost auto wave clear. Not quite winning her that, but again, a very close matchup in the bottom lane as well. Super close in CS, and like you said, BF Swords for both, probably going to be that Bloodthirster for Callisto.
And it's just weird in the bottom lane to consider who's getting Baby through this lane as a nice trade comes through for Moon. Is it the Nautilus or is it the Callista that is of the bigger advantage to have this even lane coming through? Nautilus in the late game, we already saw how much CC he puts out. He's getting a free landing phase in the mid.
Yeah, Swiffer going to get ulted up. Pink Booming going to flash on Burrow, but Swiffer going to dive back in. Damage too much so, and Apex gets first blood as Rosie has the Soul Shackles down, but doesn't complete the stun. Brawler, though, caught out of position, going to give Rady that kill, and Chiefs possibly their first Dragon.
Yeah, successful gank without Spooks' ultimate being used. They have to communicate that Sudden Fear because it looks like the Dragon's going to be collapsed upon.
Yeah, they are going to go in for it. Pink Booming will spot out a ward, does not have one of his own to put down here and potentially look at the Dragon, but Chiefs, for whatever reason, there's actually a Trinket Ward in the back for Sudden Fear, and the Chiefs, with the man advantage, do not want to push in. I guess actually it was a disadvantage with Swiffer dying.
But the big situation to consider is that Paps wasn't combat ready, no ultimate, no flash ignite, about half health, has already backed just then. I feel like they could have gone for it, but it was a risky one, and Chiefs, maybe after that loss to Fortnite, no need to take any risks.
No, and again with the comp, they have probably quite happy playing safe here, so we'll reset a little, return to the bottom side of the map as Moon didn't get too much out of his last little shopping trip here, so BF Swords a piece, but Lucian, you saw it there, can really win these trades against Callisto, but Raider is starting to power up, and Spook, possibly even scarier, starting to set up deep vision in Sudden Fear's bottom half of the map.
And Radiant has gone for the BF, so they're probably going to be the Bloodthirster, so doesn't have a lot of mobility with the passive, the Martial Poise. No attack speed or movement speed. That's the two statistics that your jump frequency and jump distance scale upon. So at this present point, those piercing lights, they do a lot of damage, and he has to navigate them.
Yeah, Christmas trees maybe rotating down as well. Remember, no team with a Dragon here, and we're going quite late as far as first Dragon timers go here at almost 13 minutes. Scuttlecrab will get cleared up there by Spook, so the early little vision lead, but we'll do have a pause here as Pap seems to be struggling slightly with his connection, but again, a very quiet game. We had a pause, what, 6 minutes ago? 6 minutes later, still in a very similar space. First blood just happened.
And the scary thing is I a bit facetiously talked about the whole, let's show up at 35 minutes with the laning phase still on and see how we do. Sejuani, Aurelia, Diana all scale super well into the mid to late game. And there's no discernible advantages across the map, so you have to give it to the Chiefs. Look, it's on paper. There's still those scenarios where the individual outplays happen. The grouping comes on point from Sudden Fear. But Chiefs, they've picked a game for the late game, and they're taking it there with basically no argument.
Yeah, I mean, that Abyssal done now for Diana, so got that item ready to go. Sheen and Phage done for Swiper there as well, so definitely powering up. There are items coming across for Sudden Fear as well, but you have to think they got so much good early and mid-game power. Just get your ultimates in, force a dragon fight, make Chiefs come to you and fight them.
You know, just get that Black Shield off cooldown, and then I mean, the depth charge and all Nautilus to CC. We already mentioned the Flash Unburrow potentially coming through, Lissandra as well. You have so many engage options, and they're not looking for them. They're not trying to get any early advantages. And the Chiefs, they're going to get Trinity Force, start getting tanky, and then opt into a fight. That's not what you want to do if you're Sudden Fear.
No, and it's been a while since we've seen a quiet Chiefs game. They've traditionally been the early game, mid-game team that's played very aggressively and gone to snowball, but, you know, shifting with the patch a little, recognizing that the tank junglers are strong, have to change strategies a bit, even just giving Swiper less of a utility champion and more of a carry champion kind of demonstrates maybe an early shift in the Chiefs style moving into playoffs.
I mean, this is, as you mentioned, a marked change in their comps. They've always been about the mid-game. Get the Ahri in the mid lane, get the Lee Sin in the jungle, try and pick up as many picks as you can and start the Dragon and turret snowball and win the game. But yep, the moment you look in Sejuani, you're not looking for the early to mid game. You're much more focused on the late game. And again, we don't know much about this Chiefs because we haven't seen it in any of their other 12 outings so far in the OPL.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to think that Sejuani, a new champion here for Spooks, hasn't played it yet. The Aurelia in the top lane, a far cry from the 5-ish Scion games that Swipe has been allowed to play. There's so much Scion when the Chiefs are involved. Just different here. I mean, Kalista for Radiant, not different. That's something he's really come up on after his first outing, which I think he felt maybe wasn't his best performance. Has looked like a very strong Kalista player. It's, I think he's most played champion currently in the OPL with a very respectable KDA. I mean, Swiffer mixing it up here on Diana, but Swiffer always mixes it up.
Yeah, Swiffer, again, he's picking up a new champion, though. Diana's one that he's added to his repertoire recently, noting the fact that Diana's been very popular, China, Korea, across the regions. And it's decent matchup to bring it into, but it's not his LeBlanc. It's not his most practiced champion. So, again, he's getting his eye into it. The big change is, as you mentioned, though, it's Spooks. Look at what he's been playing. It's been Jarvan. It's been Lee Sin. He threw in a bit of Vi, but those Vi games, he was picking up kill after kill in the early game, so it wasn't really the mid-game Vi we'd expect. This is a late-game jungle pick, so it's a very different pick coming through from Spooks, and that's why we've seen this muted start. Spooks, we joked that he was a support. I mislabeled him as support, but he does support specifically the mid lane. He's always there for the skirmishes to get Swiffer rolling in the mid-game. That's not really an option in this case.
I mean, it's sort of funny that we have this Sejuani game when Spooks dared to play a Zac game in one of his last outings. So, I mean, does have experience with some of the tanky junglers, but a bit weird for me to have Sejuani open and just take Zac instead.
It's different, though, because, like, Zac can go for really all-in early ganks, get a couple of points in that elastic slingshot, around level 5, come in with that surprise engage, and you have the passive. You have something that opens you up to very aggressive dives, and then you can potentially just live with that revive passive. Sejuani, we saw it come out from Carbon recently. You know, you can pay that champion, you can get the Glacial Prison down, then just die instantly because you have to pick up quite a few items to be tanky. Just the health stack. You don't have any resist or defensive statistics in your kit. That's the big thing about Sejuani. She doesn't get free armor, free magic resist, any inherent tankiness. She's just a frontline initiator. So you have to be so on point with the engages you pick because that Glacial Prison misses or is flashed out of, you're just a tanky frontline fighter. Yeah,
and as we do pop back into the game here, Sudden Fear and Chiefs, still a pretty quiet one here. 2 kills finally here on the board as First Blood actually went to Sudden Fear in the mid lane, but Chiefs will be the one to start their first Dragon here. A bit late at 13 minutes, but they'll be happy to have it.
It feels like they've had the control bottom lane, so that's why they're going for it. Lucian's just backed. Perfect time.
Yeah, Bloodthirst are done now for Radio as well. So good set of timings there to give Chiefs the first Dragon of this particular game between these two. Sudden Fear, interestingly, actually have a reasonable gold lead early on, about 600 gold ahead. But Swiper going to back away from a gank as Bomey's in the top on the Rek'Sai. And again, a bit of a reset. Sudden Fear look best when fighting around objectives. And right now, no mages to fight for.
Yeah, they haven't been looking for the objectives. In the mid lane, Swift is getting so much more aggressive. It's got that power spike of the 5 points into the Crescent Strike, of the Abyssal Scepter, and again, all Diana matchups change after level 6, and specifically after the first big item purchase.
Yeah, just kind of, if you're able to stay in melee range and punish them with the passive, you do absolutely ridiculous amounts of damage, especially if you get the ulti resets. I'm imagining Swiffer is going to build Merc Treads here. I'd love to see it in the matchup, and that's just going to make Lissandra's life, which is becoming complicated, into very difficult.
And what will be the next picker? Because Swiffer is not a Zhonya's person. He's much more of a Death Cat person. It's kind of a weird scenario, but it's just been the case in Oceanic. There's been times where it's like, okay, I'm a frontline fighter, I'm playing Ahri, I just want more damage. I don't need the Zhonyas because I can outplay people. He has a confident mindset. That's always how Swiffer is played. Maybe with the cooldown reduction he's picked up with the Fiendish Codex, it's probably going to be the Nationals too. So look, if he can get in there and brawl, he's going to feel pretty good about himself.
Yeah, once the Brawl, of course, will Swiffer does open up a couple of split push options as well as Brawler in the bottom. Going to get chunked out a bit by Radier. Fairly tanky on the supporter list, but the matchup really shifting now. Kalista with a Bloodthirster, so good at fighting you.
I mean, Brawler, he needs to start blowing cooldown, specifically the Dark Binding. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, taking damage there. Depth Charge going to come back in, but Black Shield going to keep Radier safe, and he'll just get him with the renders. Christmas Trees has come down, but Swiper will join in there as well. The culling keeps Rosie back there, and the teleports come down, but only the first kill onto Brawler.
I mean, these previous trades show the difference when you blind pick the Nautilus. The Morgana answers so much of what he can do. One ability that negates all CC. Honestly, that's all that Nautilus provides is CC. He's a bit tanky himself, but he doesn't provide anything else in a trade barring his CC. And at this present point, if they can't bait out that Black Shield, he just does nothing in lane.
Yeah, and Christmas Trees, you saw him down the bottom waiting and maybe a bit impatiently trying to get the gank onto Chase, but did not bite. He'll go back to base and look for his next shot now that he's finished his Sunfire Cape. Swiffer got his blue completed now as well, so he can really stick it to Lissandra, and he's been doing it already in the mid-game stages of this matchup. Blue should get donated over again to Paps, but Chiefs, just a couple of things here, and they're starting to really take control back.
I mean, the map pressure is the big thing that's coming through for them, Pastry Time. Suddenly, Diana has a lot of presence in the mid lane. Suddenly, in the bot lane, Radius 2-0. Black Shield, after the hook comes through, he's able to get these good damage trades and then has the sustain. Swiper's pushing in Nah. We talked about how these matchups shift. And we've come to that point, and here we go.
Yeah, swiping out, even maybe going to get Dobby. Does take out the turret. I guess it's a weird counter dive, but Pink Bomi going to flash forward. Swiper will flash away, though. Christmas Tree's going to try and line up a boomerang, but Aurelia already out, and the tower goes down. A good trade for Swiper.
I mean, Chiefs have navigated the difficult laning phase in all three lanes, and you can see the difference onto Paps.
Paps going in, but Swiffer is forced back there with the snare, but Chiefs going to take a tower in the bottom side. Radier had a nice hop cancel earlier just to punish him from moving with a bit of damage, and the lanes are turning. It's 2 towers now, just taken by the lane opponent.
And you can see the Chiefs were so happy to opt into the passive early game because they hit the go button 15 minutes into the game, level 9, level 10 on their solo laners, and the first item pickup. Suddenly, instantly take down 2 turrets, already have a dragon. Sudden Fear, they had the advantage in the early game, didn't get anything out of it, and Chiefs are starting to stack advantages in the mid game.
And the scariest thing here, possibly the fact that Swiper has not gone to shop yet, and that Trinity Force is coming up very soon. So
he's definitely got the gold, will have boots on top of it. Power spikes upon power spikes. We just saw a Kalista so far behind in the previous game. Maz was very well answered. Definitely going to be on par time for about a 21-minute Bloodthirster and Hurricane. It's just the recipe away from completing that Hurricane.
Yeah, Christmas Trees will pop back into the top lane though, as Empermoon struggling to finish the Infinity Edge now. Might have the goal for it. Had a quick glance earlier, but I think still struggling to find it. Cinderhulk done for Spooks as well. You mentioned spikes upon spikes. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it here for the Chiefs.
I mean, all these champions have item timings that really open up aggression. Trinity Force, always the case with Aurelia, is just completed. Swiffer looking to get into the supporters, not that tanky.
Brawler gets denied there with a Moonfall. Rosie actually will step in, but Brawler nowhere to go, and Swiffer going to clean up a kill there. 1 kill now, 1-1-0 on the Diana.
Already doing so much damage, and just with the starts of his National's Tooth, moment that item is completed, specifically with the Black Shield, it's going to be embarrassing just how much damage it does. Just re-proccing the Moonsilver Blade passive. Of course, National's Tooth has its own passive, adding more magic damage. The brawling will be strong, and suddenly you look down Sudden Fear's lineup. Who's going to be split pushing against him?
I'm not too sure. Here is Paps going to go in. Christmas Trees actually has to hop away now. Swiper, little too strong with that Trinity Force. Christmas Trees will force Aurelia back as Bomi was training towards the top side, but Radius still pushing. Doesn't have to show any respect at all. In fact, has Spooks and Rosie in his back pocket just in case.
I'm just worried about the 1-3-1 push, split push that could come through Page Time. Aurelia is going to naturally beat the Nah. Don't know who's going to answer the Diana either. And you can see the 3-man group is already doing a lot of turret damage. They have Glacial Prison for engage, disengage, Black Shield onto their AD carry. There's not a lot of good options for Sudden Fear to deal what Chiefs are doing.
No, just all of the gauge here for Chiefs. As they'll even maybe think about setting up a brush. Perhaps we'll clear out the Little Raptors and return to the mid lane to pushing. Working on a Zhonya's actually as that second item, so makes a lot of sense for the extra stasis there, just for a bit more options and outplay potential. Bomi, though, back in the top trying to gank Swiper. Emperor will spot them hiding in the brush there, so an unsuccessful couple of hides there from the Chiefs, but next Dragon up in 5 seconds.
All the map pressures coming through. Before the Dragon, dragon, the first dragon that the Chiefs took down, there was a lot of turrets. Oh, Swiper might be in trouble.
Yeah, actually the gank does come through, but Swiper just gets a solo kill practically. Now Bomi in there as well, but Swiper gets away with a Blade Surge. That will gift the dragon back over to Chiefs, and Swiper walks away safely.
I kind of preeminated that one. I saw two people on top of Swiper at the top, and I thought, okay, he could be in trouble, or he could just outplay the Gnar, have a minion away to Blade Surge too. Aurelia mechanics on point, pastry time.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't even need that much, just too strong, and that's the theme of the, 15-minute mark here. As soon as Chiefs got their big spikes, they've just started dominating their lanes, and you mentioned the 1-3-1, usually very risky because you spread out so thin, but when you're this ahead and you feel this strong in your lanes, it's absolutely the best strategy to use.
And look, at this present point, they can probably split push, engage, 5v5, all superior to their opponents, and if they pick up the third dragon in particular, they'll even be able to rotate someone like Sejuani. Not the highest move speed, but we'll be able to rotate with the 5% movement speed and go, if there's any sort of a collapse, just rotate into a lane. So Chiefs, I mean, to say they're in a good spot is an understatement. And Sudden Fear, they just needed to start pressuring advantages early to delay these timings, because there's always a timing in this game where a lot of strategic options for Sudden Fear just won't exist.
And you know, that's not reflected necessarily in the golded here. Only 2,000 gold ahead for Chiefs. Sudden Fear have kept it very competitive, but Rosie actually may be caught out. Fail flashes a tad there, trying to create some distance, but does get Fates called out of the way, and Radio, a very nice save.
It found Radio, of course, with the Fates call. You always want to focus down that AD carry because the support can just be basically Zonya's or goes into stasis and pulled away. So that was a very fortuitous timing coming through from the Morgana. And Chiefs, everything's coming through for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually Rosie saving Radiant, but I guess finally answering back with a Kalista ulti after many years.
Fair.
It is only fair. Many good years together as a duo here. We do have another pause, of course, perhaps still struggling a bit, but playing well, and that's the thing. I do agree that Sudden Fear could have pulled the trigger a little earlier and applied some pressure, but they do have some potential. They've got a lot of good pick, a lot of good engage. It's tricky to get deep vision down in this particular instance because your towers are getting pressured so much. But if they can find some picks, they will bring the lead back and start to give themselves a chance back into the game.
And while I'm giddy about the things that Chiefs are putting out, as you mentioned, every comp put together will offer an advantage of some sort. The pick CC coming through from Sudden Fear is strong, specifically in team fights. You get rid of that black shield, you can get a big engage onto the Kalista, take her down, and there's less damage sources. Specifically in smaller skirmishes, 3v3s, if they can navigate the Glacial Prison, they can pick up kills. They have a very strong front line. Lucian's struggling for items. I think in this game in particular, Lucian's going to need the 2-3 items, just burst through the front line and do relevant damage to the back line. He'll get there, but only the Infinity Edge completer right now. Sudden Fear, they need to try and get the picks. They need the small fights because 5v5, and specifically in a split push scenario, I just don't know how they can deal with this Aurelia-Diana combo.
No, and I think the earlier 5v5s, Sudden Fear would have been happy to opt into and try and take them, but didn't get them. Chiefs constantly split them up, ran them around the map, kept them contained in those lanes, and then all of that mid-game that Sudden Fear were looking for just evaporated in an instant almost. It was 15 minutes into this game. Abyssal came through, Bloodthirster came through, Trinity Force was almost done for Swiper, and suddenly, like, oh, we're still in the landing phase? Perfect.
And look, we're talking about short time spans. This game has only been 20 minutes. Yeah, but you have to consider, you know, we already mentioned the regen starts. How different a game would this have been if Bomi did find the Sejuani, take her out in the jungle, delay her power spike, start to create lane pressure, get aggressive wards down, keep the Sejuani down, and then take advantage of these low stat, no combat stat solos. That's the big thing, is the snowball could have come early. It didn't. Chiefs navigate that early phase, and that's how this matchup has changed. So again, a lot had to be done early, which is often difficult to execute on. It requires precise timing, just being in the right place at the right time, so close to the right place as we saw on the mini-map, but you know, rose-tinted glasses and hindsight vision are a bit different. At this present point, though, when those first items have come through, that's really the big thing to talk about, though. The Chiefs look so strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a Sightstone in Rek'Sai's inventory. Bomi is, you know, maybe looking to get some vision now, but imagine, you know, that first kill, a bit more aggressive. Snowball in the vision even, potentially, but Christmas Tree maybe going to light something up. Doesn't have enough. Narbar left. Swiffer going to dive back in. The double ulti pop there for Sedge, and Swiper right in the back there. Gets exhausted, ulted up as well. Eats everything and goes down. Rosie actually picked off there as well, and Sudden Fear going to look for more. Swiffer gets snared up as well. Now going to get aggressed on by Emperor. Dives back in, wants the kill, but Christmas Trees will take him out instead, and all of a sudden, Sudden Fear get a tower and 3 clean kills.
Sudden Fear, we mentioned they could get picks, and the picks were on the menu that fight, specifically onto Rosie first, meant no black shield. The second round of back shields weren't going to come through, and this could be a second tower. That'd be a massive shift in the momentum of this game.
We talked about the gold lead being thin. Chiefs now going to lose it almost immediately. 1,000 gold up now for Sudden Fizz. Zonya's completed for Paps as he goes back to complete the gold. Christmas trees caught a bit out of position though. Gonna try and fight Spooks a bit here, but looks like they'll just give it up. Raider still chugging spears and it does get the kill.
Yeah, just nothing Christmas trees could do in that situation. Probably accepted his fate. There's no way he'd get away from the CC combination that had come through. And Sudden Fear, it's a small price to pay for what was a big lead they managed to regenerate.
Yeah, back on the front foot now for Chiefs, and Lucian had finished his Infinity Edge in that fight as well, so had a lot more damage to put out, which certainly helped in the pick potential. Now actually moving for a Ghost Blade, so a little late on the mid-game aggressive choice, but I actually do quite like it.
I mean, look, it gives you 6 seconds of power, so if you're split pushing or if you're team fighting with the attack speed that comes through from the active in particular, it can be very good, but you're gating a lot of your consistent damage around a short cooldown, and with super tanks in the game. Swiper already got the health coming through. Frozen Heart already completed from Spooks. I feel like Youmu's in a split pushing situation, say a Vayne, it's great. But when you're fighting against super tanks in particular, it's what we saw in the games on Monday is that you just don't necessarily have the damage to take them out as my goodness.
Swiffer going in, just gets a kill, and that's, when we talk about Diana Burst, that's exactly what we mean.
And isn't the Nationals toothpaste time? It's actually the Morellonomicon. This is the build that Faker went for SKT. Look, your cooldown reduction it comes to, you still have the 20%, but man, you have burst with the early AP.
And did get the Merc Treads as well, so going to navigate all of that CC from Lysandra and just be able to dive on any of the carries that he wants. And the good Diana players, you saw it, that burst, the passive in particular, so much hidden damage almost. And Radier going to rotate and get a turret. He's done with his Hurricane now.
That's not even with the attack speed on the Diana to get the consistent passive damage. That was just a lot of skills being hit. It was the double Lunar Rush coming through from the ultimate. As you mentioned, this is about 8 minutes earlier with the Hurricane, and the difference between those 8 minutes is that he's going to wreck fights, this Kalista.
Yeah, now Swiffer, again, without the Nashers, chunking out the turrets and gets one. Moonsilver Blade that gets the other perk over. Is it in a split push situation? That passive affects the turrets.
Yeah, the passive affects the turrets. That's kind of one of the hidden powers coming through from Diana. And they just keep pushing. They've got a lot of turret damage, and they're chasing Sudden Fear away from the turret.
Yeah, aggressive Kalista ult actually used as Swiffer, gets depth charge, but just runs away with the Black Shield on top of him with no worries at all. It's Radier. We'll hop back, take out a couple more minions. We'll rend them to death as he throws some Qs back. Swiffer actually going to go back, should complete his recall, will not get caught, although it was quite close. And Swiper back in the top protecting his turret. Sudden Fear trying to counter push out, but another Dragon is back in a minute 30.
Yeah, 4 turrets. The 2 specifically haven't broken the top turret. Aurelia gets more free farm, starts moving towards that big tank item, just has cost-effective stats. And Moon in the bottom lane is in trouble.
Yeah, getting ulted there by Rosie. Raiding going to pop back in. Easy Ren for that next kill, and Chiefs going to have a quick setup for this next Dragon.
But when you're able to have a gank rush at the Gromps, sorry, the Krugs, I almost got it there page time. It just didn't stick the landing. That's a bit worrying, because at this point, they've got so much aggressive vision, even aggressive pink at the enemy red buff. To lose control of your jungle against a Sejuani comp is just really painful, as you could see. And Sudden Fear, they're safe places to farm across the map. They're dwindling.
Yeah, they really forced back, especially in the bottom half of the map, towards basically their inhibitors almost at this point as Christmas trees, again, just can't contend with the Aurelia, especially in mini-Gnar form. Swiper, of course, knows his top lane matchups exceptionally well and doing a great job of trading with his Trinity Force.
And look, opting into a Sunfire delays your round ones, makes this matchup that much harder. Swiper just waiting for cooldowns. He could go in, but of course, just expecting some sort of 2 or 3 man stack in the top. He doesn't need to go aggressive because he decides the pressure of the top lane. If he wants to push it in, he'll do it with his ultimate. If he wants to hold it under his turret and free farm, he'll do that. And in a 1v1 combination, there's nothing Gnar can do against Swiper's Aurelia.
No, and Dragon back in 15 seconds. Swiper right now is the teleport advantage, although Christmas trees should get his teleport back in time. But Moon down the bottom lane has to back off as soon as that wave goes down, and the Chiefs are already looking for him.
I mean, the Chiefs have run this red side jungle. Not the top side jungle, but definitely the red side jungle. It also removes a lot of options from Bomi because he doesn't have the tunnel network in bottom. It's been completely evaporated by the pressure that's come through. It's going to be another Dragon, the 3rd Dragon coming through from Chiefs. The movement speed, they're already all over this red side jungle. They're just going to be that much closer, that much faster to collapse with the 5% move speed.
Yes, the Dragon will go down. Christmas trees as a consolation did finally finish the top lane outer turret, so has that taken away there as Moon continuing to farm away, needs those items, but can't venture too far forward because Rosie and Spooks might just be waiting for you.
And look, if you just look at the scoreboard, it looks like it's a close game, but it definitely doesn't feel like it with Sudden Fear. It's not just me pointing it out. Sudden Fear, you can tell by how defensive they're playing, how they're not even entering their own red side jungle, despite, as you can notice, only 1,000 gold lead. Sudden Fear also agree. They're running scared of Chiefs comp, and I can understand why, but if you just hang back and lose the minimum, eventually against this late game scaling comp coming from Chiefs, they're just going to run you over in a fight.
I mean, even if you're just losing the minimum, you kind of run out of minimum to give at some point here. And Sudden Fear, maybe it's too much at this point, but they're continuing to fight. The top side of the map, especially as Baron becomes a bigger objective, probably the best spot to look for more picks. Because you saw, when they get picks, they start really snowballing through the fights.
And look, Rady is the one they want to take down. He's their big threat, but they have 3 consistent damage dealers. Swiper, especially when he has the hit and style active, does consistent damage. Diana does so much consistent damage. Don't be swayed by the burst. The consistent damage, it comes out as well. And look, Radius Callista, we know exactly what he does. So the consistent damage, there's not really one crown jewel they can take down, but they need to go for these engages because they keep losing turrets.
Yeah, I actually love Radius Callista build as well. Going for a Bilgewater Cutlass third, so the double lifesteal build here with the Hurricane, because that's a Blade of the Ruin King coming up.
And look, the sustain is one factor, but even the attack speed from both the Hurricane, the Berserker's Greaves, and the Blade of the Ruin King is going to be just so much mobility. Going to be hopping around, going to have Black Shield and some defensive options, but it's always going to get that extra auto attack. And any champion who has auto attack based modifiers like Expunge, like Rend, want to get higher attack speed values because it allows them to AWP walk aggressively, defensively, and get the most out of their abilities. So he's going to have all those things. The only thing he doesn't have is a QSS, and he just has to rely on good mate Rosie to help him out.
Yeah, and thankfully no major armor here as well. Completed yet for Sudden Fear, with the Warden's Mail up for Christmas trees, but not quite converted into that Randy win. So not too desperate for a last whisper either. And Christmas trees doing a good job split pushing, actually keeping Swiper back for a little while longer. But even Swiper not too afraid to fight. In fact, he's going back in, but Christmas trees in the Mega Gnar form going to fight right back.
I mean, look, Swiper's happy to pick up farm because he will pick up all those items. He's not going aggressively unless he sees 5 members. And he really wants to fight. At this present point, he doesn't. He's got important item timing coming soon in the Randuins. As, yeah, I mean, you can see Chiefs really pushing in and taking control of this bot side jungle.
Yeah, and I think for me, kind of looking at the trinkets, actually, that double upgraded sweeper from the jungle and support, helping so much with that aggressive vision denial on the bottom side. And you can tell it's been focused. Chiefs are definitely looking at the Dragon as their main point of contention, which, again, will open up the Baron as Sudden Fear continue to get control of the top side. But even if Swiper just sticks around for a bit of extra vision, the Chiefs at this point, they're spreading out again to aggressively attack the side that they've already won on the Rift, but just doing such a good job of controlling the tempo of the game. And that's been the biggest thing here. It's a close game here, the scoreline and the gold. You said it already. You'd be forgiven for thinking it wasn't a close game, but at this point, the Chiefs just taking things at their own pace. But they do have to win the game. Remember, we're still at a point, as we do have another pause, where Sudden Fear, could catch them out, but the Chiefs are playing intentionally, safely, to just make sure that that doesn't happen.
And look, one of the most surprising things is that we're on to patch 5.5. So, of course, we have the trinkets that have come through for a couple of patches now. The big consideration is both the top laner and the mid laner from Sudden Fear have warding trinkets. They all have access to a mini sightstone from the wards. They have double sightstone and double warding trinkets, and still the mini-map on their red side is bad. That's how much value they're getting from those sweepers. I mean, you can see how many wards you've killed. At this point, that statistic is going to be just massive from Rosie and the Chiefs. And the thing you consider is they know they need the wards, but they haven't been able to get them in.
Yeah, and it's been a great game so far, but unfortunately Sudden Fear have had to forfeit. They've run out of pause timer here in the game and unable, they can't fill the roster 4v5, they're not allowed to play. So, unfortunately, with what was developing into quite an interesting strategic game, that even though the Chiefs, despite the scoreline, look quite ahead, they will get their last victory, though maybe feel it's a bit hollow, thinking they didn't get enough practice in. And Sudden Fear, a great showing on the day. 1-1's the result that maybe not what they wanted, but they'll at least accept it.
It'll be a disappointing result, especially because, I mean, looking at the gold, it was a very competitive game, and there was always the potential for outplay. We wrote off Fortnite in a previous game, and they came back and beat the Chiefs with a much bigger disadvantage. Sudden Fear, it wasn't their day.
Yeah, and as a result, we'll have a look at the results of the day after that forfeit. As you can see, a win there for Sudden Fear against Avant was a great first game, but unfortunately, a bit of a collapser at the end. Some issues, unfortunately, meant they had to forfeit, but the Chiefs, who looked ahead, will get the victory.
Sudden Fear, they get a win on the board. That puts all the pressure on Fauna. Of course, the battle, as we mentioned, for the seeding at the bottom, specifically to get a chance to get that, to choose your team in the OCS. it's very relevant.
And you know what? Chiefs are going to start thinking about playoffs. There are big moments coming up for the OPL because we're almost at the end of the regular season. That'll be finishing on Monday, of course, but the semi-finals is coming up first. April 1st and 2nd, split one semis are coming in. That is the top 4 teams facing off. One will play 4th and 2nd will play 3rd. And, of course, the finals after that as well. So a lot of action. That'll be on April 9th. They're in a best of 5 all the way through for a playoff. So OPL season coming to an end, but plenty more with playoffs just around the corner.
That first playoff, as we mentioned, April 1st, that's next Wednesday. That's really soon. And these top teams, we don't exactly know who that's going to be just yet, but we're excited to see which of Avant and Immunity join Legacy, Direwolves, and the Chiefs at the top.
And with that, we close our second last day of play. We've got one more left on Monday, so don't forget to tune in for them. But it's been a great time so far. Join us for more OPL, but for myself, Papa Smithy, and the rest of our live production crew, we'll see you on the Monday.